I'm Megan, 32, and I built my business from nothing after escaping my toxic family at 18. For years, I heard nothing from them. No birthday calls. No holiday wishes. Just silence. Until last Tuesday when my phone lit up with Mom on the screen. Her voice was desperate. "We need $75,000 by Friday, Megan." 14 years of silence broken by a demand for money. The irony wasn't lost on me. Where were they when I needed them? If you're watching this, let me know where you're from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join me on this journey of healing and standing up for yourself. My earliest memories take place in our suburban Pennsylvania home, a white two-story with green shutters that looked perfect from the outside. I was the second child, born 3 years after my sister Amber. In those first few years, I remember feeling loved. Dad would swing me around in the backyard while Mom took photos, saying I was her little sunshine. Amber and I shared a bedroom with matching pink bedspreads, and sometimes she'd even let me play with her Barbie collection. Everything changed around my 5th birthday. The shift was subtle at first. When we'd both ask for ice cream, Amber would get 2 scoops while I'd get 1. Mom explained, "Amber's bigger. She needs more." When we'd both talk at dinner, my parents would shush me but listen intently to Amber's stories about kindergarten. "Wait your turn, Megan," they'd say, but my turn rarely came. By 1st grade, the pattern was unmistakable. Amber got new school clothes while I got her hand-me-downs, despite our parents' comfortable income. "They're barely worn, Megan. Don't be ungrateful." Mom would scold when I asked for just one new outfit like my sister. I tried everything to gain their approval. When I brought home perfect spelling tests, Mom would glance and nod, saying, "That's nice, honey." But when Amber brought home a B-, there was celebration. "You worked so hard on this." Dad would beam, taking us out for pizza to celebrate her improvement. The first major incident happened when I was 7. For the science fair, I'd spent weeks creating a solar system model, carefully painting each planet and stringing them perfectly. The night before the fair, I found it destroyed in our bedroom, planets crushed and supports broken. Amber claimed she'd accidentally bumped into it. Through my tears, I begged my parents to believe me that it was deliberate. "Stop trying to get your sister in trouble," Dad said firmly. "Accidents happen. Maybe this will teach you not to wait until the last minute." But I didn't wait. "I've been working on it for weeks." I sobbed. Mom sighed. "Megan, enough with the drama. This sibling rivalry has to stop." That night, I learned 2 painful lessons. My word meant nothing against Amber's, and my feelings weren't important to my parents. I stayed up rebuilding what I could, receiving a participation ribbon instead of the prize I'd hoped for. I developed coping mechanisms. The library became my sanctuary during recess. I discovered I loved drawing, creating worlds where little girls were heard and valued. My elementary school sketchbooks were filled with families where everyone got equal attention, equal love. My teacher, Mrs. Barton, noticed my withdrawal. "You have such talent, Megan," she'd say, displaying my artwork. For those brief moments of recognition, I felt visible. But at home, the pattern continued and deepened. As we approached adolescence, I sensed the worst was yet to come. Amber's tactics were becoming more sophisticated, and my parents' blindness to her behavior more entrenched. By age 10, I'd created an emotional armor. I stopped showing my parents my achievements. I stopped crying in front of them when Amber would accidentally ruin my things. I learned to expect nothing, which hurt less than hoping for support that never came. But inside, a quiet determination was growing. Someday, I promised myself, I would create a life where I mattered. Middle school brought a whole new battlefield. At 11, I entered 6th grade with hopeful naivete that maybe things would be different. Amber was now 14 and in 8th grade, which I thought might create enough separation for me to breathe. I was wrong. Amber had become popular, surrounding herself with girls who followed her lead. She was pretty, confident, and knew exactly how to charm adults while tormenting those beneath her social rank. Unfortunately, I was her favorite target. Her tactics evolved from simple at-home sabotage to elaborate social destruction. She started with whispers in the hallway. That's my weird little sister. She still sleeps with a nightlight. Not true, but the damage was done. She'd warned popular girls away from me. My sister is such a teacher's pet. Total loser material. By Thanksgiving break, I'd earned the nickname Shadow because, according to Amber, I was always lurking around, trying to copy everything she did. The reality was I avoided her at all costs, but perception became reality in the brutal social hierarchy of middle school. The cafeteria became a daily nightmare. I'd find a seat, and suddenly everyone would move, leaving me alone at an empty table. Amber would walk by with her friends, giggling. "Guess no one wants to catch your weirdness," she'd say, just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. My belongings regularly disappeared from my locker. My gym clothes would mysteriously end up in toilet bowls. My homework assignments vanished from my backpack. When I tried telling my parents, the response was always the same. "Middle school is tough for everyone, Megan," Mom would say dismissively. "You need to toughen up a little." Dad was more blunt. "Stop trying to blame your sister for everything. Take some responsibility." The worst incident happened at Lily Garcia's 13th birthday party. Somehow, I'd received an invitation, probably because Lily's mother had insisted she invite everyone in their math class. It was my first party that year, and despite my anxiety, I was excited. I'd saved my allowance to buy Lily a beautiful journal with a handmade bookmark I'd created. That night, I'd actually felt pretty in my new blue dress from Target, one of the rare new items I'd received after begging for something that hadn't been Amber's first. The party was at Lily's house, with swimming in their backyard pool. I was nervous, but determined to have fun. Just as I was starting to relax, Amber appeared with 3 of her friends, apparently invited by Lily's older sister. "What are you wearing?" Amber announced loudly when she saw me. "Is that my old Target dress? God, you look pathetic trying to fit in." "It's new," I said quietly, feeling every eye on me. "Well, it looks exactly like the one Mom bought me that I gave to Goodwill because it was so ugly." The laughter around me was unbearable, but what happened next was worse. While I was swimming, Amber went through my bag. When we gathered for cake, she held up my diary that I'd stupidly brought with me. "Listen to this, everyone," she announced. "Dear Diary, I think Jason looked at me in math today. Maybe he doesn't think I'm invisible." The mockery in her voice made me want to disappear. Jason was right there, looking mortified and uncomfortable. I ran to grab it from her, but she tossed it to her friend. For 10 excruciating minutes, they read selections to the increasingly uncomfortable party guests. By the time I got my diary back, I was fighting tears and failing. I called my mom to pick me up. "The party just started, Megan," she complained. "Can't you stick it out? I'm in the middle of making dinner." Amber's here with her friends. They read my diary to everyone. I managed between sobs. There was a pause. "Well, you shouldn't have brought a diary to a party. That's just asking for trouble." I walked home 3 miles in growing darkness, clutching my violated diary and what remained of my dignity. One teacher noticed what was happening. Ms. Reynolds, my English teacher, kept me after class one day. "Is everything okay at home, Megan?" she asked gently. For a moment, I considered telling her everything. But years of not being believed had taught me caution. "It's fine," I said automatically. "You know, I notice things," she continued. "How you flinch when certain students walk by. How your excellent homework sometimes mysteriously disappears." My eyes filled with tears I refused to shed. Ms. Reynolds handed me a notebook. "This is just for you. Keep it somewhere safe. Writing helped me through some tough times when I was your age." That notebook became my lifeline. I kept it hidden beneath a loose floorboard under my bed, filling it with my thoughts, fears, and increasingly, my plans for escape someday. By 8th grade, my anxiety had become so severe I'd developed stomach problems. My grades slipped as I struggled to concentrate amid constant social warfare. My parents noticed this decline, of course. "What's happening with your grades, Megan?" Dad demanded, holding my report card with its unprecedented C's. "You used to be such a good student." "Maybe if I wasn't dealing with Amber's bullying every day," I started. Mom cut me off. There you go again, blaming your sister for your problems. Amber is thriving with straight A's despite being involved in so many activities. Maybe you should take a page from her book instead of making excuses. That night, I cried silently into my pillow, feeling utterly trapped. 2 more years until high school. 5 years until I could legally leave. The numbers repeated in my head like a survival mantra as I drifted into restless sleep. High school arrived with Amber as a junior and me as a freshman. I'd spent the summer nurturing a fragile hope that high school would offer a fresh start. The building was bigger, there were more students, and surely Amber would be too busy with her own life to focus on making mine miserable. For 2 glorious weeks, it seemed my wish had come true. I met Zoe and Tanya in my biology class, and we clicked immediately. They knew nothing about my history with Amber, and for the first time in years, I experienced what it felt like to just be Megan, not Amber's weird sister. We sat together at lunch, partnered on lab projects, and even made plans to go to the mall that weekend. That Friday, I was practically floating as I walked to my locker after school. The weekend plan with actual friends felt miraculous. Then I saw Amber leaning against my locker, wearing the predatory smile I'd come to dread. "Made some friends, have you?" she said, examining her manicured nails. "That's cute." "What do you want, Amber?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just wondering if they know what a pathetic little freak you are. Zoe seems nice. Be a shame if she found out about that time you wet the bed at summer camp." My stomach dropped. I'd been 12, with a fever. "You wouldn't." Her laugh was soft and vicious. "Wouldn't I? Stay in your lane, Megan. You don't get to be happy here. That's not how this works." By Monday, Zoe and Tanya were avoiding me. When I finally cornered Zoe by the water fountain, her expression was a mixture of disgust and pity. "Amber told us everything," she said, "about your problems, and how you obsessively follow her friends around. She said you're kind of unstable." "None of that is true," I protested, feeling the familiar burn of helpless rage. Zoe just shrugged. "She's your sister. Why would she lie?" Why indeed? That question haunted me through the halls of Roosevelt High School for the next 3 years. Amber's psychological warfare escalated to new heights. My personal items regularly disappeared from my bedroom, only to reappear damaged or in strange places. My homework would vanish from my backpack. My few attempts to develop friendships were systematically destroyed through Amber's network of influence. She became more sophisticated in her methods. Rather than outright stealing my things, she began gaslighting me. She'd move my textbooks, then act concerned when I couldn't find them. "Mom, I'm worried about Megan," she'd say at dinner. "She's getting so forgetful lately." My parents started treating me like I was becoming mentally unstable. "Maybe we should have her evaluated," I overheard Mom telling Dad one night. "Amber says she's been acting erratic at school." The incident that crystallized my parents' perception of me happened during junior year. I'd been saving for months from my after-school job at Rigby's bookstore to buy a camera for my photography class. Photography had become my passion, a way to document reality that couldn't be easily manipulated or denied. When my camera disappeared from my desk drawer, I knew exactly what had happened. I confronted Amber in the kitchen, where my parents could hear. "Give me back my camera," I demanded. Amber's eyes widened with practiced innocence. "What are you talking about?" "My Nikon. The one I saved 6 months for. It's gone from my room, and you're the only one who would take it." "Megan," Mom snapped, "stop accusing your sister without evidence. She's been doing this for years." My voice rose with years of suppressed frustration. "She takes my things, ruins my friendships, makes my life hell, and you never believe me." Dad stepped between us. "That's enough. Amber, have you seen Megan's camera?"
"No, Dad."
"I swear." Her voice trembled perfectly. I don't know why she hates me so much. 2 days later, my camera was discovered in the trunk of my car, which I rarely used. Somehow, it had gotten damaged, the lens cracked beyond repair. "You must have left it there and forgotten," Mom said, Her tone implying this confirmed her concerns about my mental state. And now look, it's ruined because of your carelessness. I never put it there, I insisted, knowing how crazy I sounded. I don't even drive to school. It was in my desk drawer. Dad's expression was a mixture of disappointment and concern. Megan, we're worried about you. These paranoid accusations, the forgetfulness, maybe you need to see someone. I stopped trying to convince them after that. Instead, I focused on survival and escape. Eleanor, the owner of Rigby's bookstore where I worked after school, became my sanctuary. A retired professor in her 60s with kind eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense, she noticed my deteriorating state. "Something's eating you alive, kid," she said one evening as we closed the shop. "Want to talk about it?" For the first time, I told someone the whole story. She listened without interruption, her face growing progressively more troubled. When I finished, she said simply, "That's abuse, Megan. What your sister is doing is abuse, and your parents are enabling it." Hearing someone name it sent me into tears I'd held back for years. Eleanor let me cry, then handed me a tissue. "What's your plan?" "Plan? You're smart, resourceful, and nearly 18. I assume you're not planning to stay in that house forever." That conversation changed everything. With Eleanor's guidance, I began documenting the abuse. I kept a detailed journal hidden at the bookstore. I recorded conversations on my phone. I opened a separate bank account Eleanor helped me set up, where I deposited most of my paycheck each week. Most importantly, I applied to colleges in secret, using Eleanor's address for correspondence. When my acceptance letter from Northwestern arrived with a partial scholarship, I felt the first real hope in years. I didn't tell my parents, knowing Amber would find a way to sabotage this too. As graduation approached, I lived a double life. At home, I remained the beaten down, mentally unstable daughter. At the bookstore and in private, I meticulously planned my escape. Eleanor helped me understand financial aid forms, apartment applications, and budget planning. "You're not alone anymore, kid," she would remind me when it all felt overwhelming. The truth I carried silently through those final months of high school was both painful and liberating. My parents would never see Amber for who she truly was, and they would never be the parents I needed them to be. Accepting this truth was like removing a thorn that had been embedded in my heart for years. It hurt coming out, but afterward, I could finally begin to heal. The breaking point came 3 weeks before graduation. I'd been accepted to Northwestern with a substantial scholarship, plus financial aid. It wasn't a full ride, but with my savings and a work-study program, I could make it happen. The financial aid office had sent a package of information, including housing options and orientation dates, to Eleanor's address, as I'd requested. Eleanor gave me the thick envelope after my shift, her eyes bright with pride. "This is it, kid. Your ticket out." That night, I made the mistake of bringing the package home to review in my bedroom. I thought Amber was at her friend's house and my parents were at their monthly dinner club. I spread the papers across my bed, allowing myself to imagine the life waiting for me in Chicago. A life where no one knew me as Amber's weird sister. A life where I could start fresh. I didn't hear the bedroom door open. Amber's voice startled me. "What's all this?" I scrambled to gather the papers, but she was faster, snatching the acceptance letter. "Northwestern." Her voice dripped with derision. "As if you could get into Northwestern. Where did you steal this from?" "I didn't steal it. It's mine. I applied in secret because I knew you'd try to ruin it like you ruin everything else." Something flashed in her eyes, something almost like respect before the familiar cruelty returned. "Mom and Dad will never believe you got in when I didn't. They'll think you forged it. They don't need to believe it. I'm 18 in 2 weeks. I don't need their permission." "You need their money," she countered. "You think you can afford Northwestern on your pathetic bookstore salary?" "I got a scholarship. And financial aid." She laughed, but I could see the calculation behind her eyes. "We'll see about that." I should have known what was coming. At dinner the next night, Amber casually mentioned college plans. "Dad, when do we need to commit to state for my enrollment? It's my first choice, but just so you know, tuition went up this year." Dad nodded. "Already taken care of, sweetheart. We've been saving for your college fund since you were born. The perfect opening. What about my college fund? Asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Mom looked confused. What do you mean? For Northwestern. I got accepted with a scholarship, but I'll still need some help with expenses. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad cleared his throat. Megan, be serious. Northwestern is an elite school. State is more appropriate for your academic level. I have a 3.9 GPA, I said quietly. I got a 1480 on my SATs. Amber rolled her eyes. Sure you did. I can show you the acceptance letter. Honey, Mom said in the condescending tone I'd grown to hate, making up stories isn't healthy. If you're feeling left out of the college conversation, we can look at community colleges. I went to my room and returned with the Northwestern package. It's all here. My acceptance, my scholarship, everything. Dad flipped through the papers with a frown. Where did you even apply without our knowledge? How would you have paid the application fee? I've been saving for my job. Eleanor helped me. That woman from the bookstore? Mom's voice rose. She helped you go behind our backs? Because I knew this would happen. I knew you wouldn't believe me or support me. Just like you never have. Amber put her hand on Dad's arm. She's doing it again, Dad. The paranoid accusations. Remember what Dr. Levine said about reinforcing her delusions? I froze. What are you talking about? What Dr. Levine? Mom at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. We've been consulting with a psychiatrist about your issues, Megan. The paranoia, the accusations against your sister, the increasingly erratic behavior. The betrayal was so complete it felt physical, like all the air had been sucked from the room. They'd been discussing me with a psychiatrist who had never even met me, based solely on Amber's fabrications. I'm not crazy, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've never been crazy. She's been gaslighting me for years, and you've helped her. Dad pushed the Northwestern papers back across the table. I think you should go to your room now, Megan. We'll discuss what to do about this situation when you're calmer. That night, I made my final decision. I would leave immediately after graduation. Not the week after, as I'd planned to give myself time to say goodbye to Eleanor and pack properly. No, I would leave the very day I received my diploma. For the next 3 weeks, I went through the motions at home while finalizing my preparations. I secured my important documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport, and kept them at Eleanor's. I opened a new email account my family couldn't access. I arranged for my final paycheck to be direct deposited into my secret account. Graduation day arrived, sunny and mild. I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, scanning the audience. Eleanor was there, beaming with pride. My parents sat with Amber, looking bored until it was her turn to walk as a marshal for the ceremony, having graduated the year before. There was no celebration for me afterward. My parents took photos with Amber in her special marshal stole, then announced they were taking her shopping for dorm supplies, followed by dinner at her favorite restaurant. We'll bring you back something, Megan, Mom said as an afterthought. Don't bother, I replied. I have plans with friends. The look of surprise on their faces almost made me laugh. They couldn't imagine I had friends. In their narrative, I was the disturbed loner. Once they left, I moved quickly. I had already packed my essentials in a large duffel and backpack, hidden under my bed. I took only what mattered most, some clothes, my camera with its repaired lens, thanks to Eleanor, my journals, and a few books. I left behind the life they had constructed for me, the identity of the unstable, jealous, lesser daughter. On my bed, I left a note. I'm leaving to attend Northwestern as planned. I won't be in contact for a while. I need to heal from years of Amber's abuse and your willful blindness to it. Maybe someday we can have an honest conversation about what really happened in this house. Until then, I release you from any obligation to me, as you released yourselves long ago. Megan. Eleanor was waiting outside in her station wagon. Ready, kid? I took one last look at the house that had never really been a home. Ready. My phone rang that night as Eleanor and I were having a quiet celebration dinner at her apartment, where I'd be staying until my dorm opened in August. Dad's name flashed on the screen. Megan, What the hell is this note? Your mother is beside herself. Come home right now. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the familiar rush of anxiety at his anger.
No, Dad.
I'm 18, I've graduated, and I'm starting my own life. This is ridiculous. If this is about Northwestern, we can discuss it, but this dramatic exit is unacceptable. There's nothing to discuss. I've accepted their offer, and I'm going. With or without your blessing. With what money? He demanded. I've been saving. I have scholarships. I'll take out loans if I need to. I'll work 3 jobs if I have to. But I'm going. His voice softened slightly, moving from anger to manipulation. Megan, honey, we're worried about you. This impulsive behavior isn't healthy.
Goodbye, Dad.
I'll call when I'm ready. I hung up and turned off my phone. The silence that followed felt like freedom. My first months of independence were a crash course in adulting. Eleanor's spare room became my sanctuary while I worked full-time at the bookstore through the summer. By August, I'd saved enough for my first semester's expenses beyond what my scholarships covered. Moving to Chicago was terrifying and exhilarating. The campus sprawled along Lake Michigan, grand and intimidating. My dorm room was tiny, shared with a stranger named Jasmine who arrived with 3 suitcases and a boisterous laugh that filled our small space. You travelite, she remarked, eyeing my single duffel bag and backpack. I managed to smile. I like to be mobile. Jasmine became my first real friend in years. She was studying business and marketing, while I pursued journalism with a photography minor. She never pushed when I was vague about my family, and gradually, I felt safe enough to share pieces of my story. That's some serious psychological warfare, she said when I finally told her about Amber. No wonder you flinch when someone touches your stuff. I hadn't even realized I did that. The freedom to exist without constant sabotage was intoxicating. I could leave my books on my desk and find them untouched when I returned. My assignments were never mysteriously deleted or damaged. Professors evaluated my work on its merits, not through the lens of preconceived notions about my stability. Still, years of psychological abuse left their mark. I struggled with trust issues and jumped to worst-case scenarios. When my photography professor kept me after class, my first thought was that I was in trouble, not that he wanted to praise my work and recommend me for a departmental showcase. During winter break, I stayed on campus rather than return home. My parents had called and emailed sporadically, their messages alternating between guilt trips and demands that I stop this nonsense.
I responded minimally, maintaining firm boundaries.
On Christmas morning, my phone rang with my mother's number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Megan, it's Christmas. When are you coming home? I'm not, Mom. I told you I'm staying in Chicago this break. She sighed dramatically. This has gone on long enough. Whatever grudge you're holding, it's time to let it go. Family is family. I agree. That's why I've been seeing a therapist to work through the trauma of growing up in our family. Silence then, trauma? Don't you think that's a bit overdramatic? Every family has issues. Not every family systematically undermines one child while elevating another. Not every family gaslights a child into believing she's mentally unstable. I don't know where you get these ideas. We gave you everything. The conversation ended as they always did, with my mother refusing to acknowledge reality and me feeling drained. But something was different this time. I didn't spiral afterward. Progress, my therapist Dr. Martinez would call it. By sophomore year, Jasmine and I had moved into a small apartment off campus with another friend, Taylor. I was working part-time as a photographer for the school newspaper and picking up freelance gigs shooting events on weekends. My savings grew slowly, but steadily. My parents' attempts at contact became less frequent, especially after I made it clear I wouldn't be providing free editing services for Amber's graduate school applications. She's always been the writer in the family, Mom had said, apparently forgetting my journalism major. Junior year brought a turning point. My photography professor, Marcus Williams, selected me for a competitive internship with a digital marketing firm. They need someone with an eye like yours, he said. Don't sell yourself short on the interview. The internship turned into a job offer upon graduation, with flexible hours that allowed me to develop a side hustle creating content for small businesses' social media. I discovered I had a knack for storytelling through images paired with concise, compelling copy. Jasmine, now my roommate and best friend, was impressed with my growing client list. "You should turn this into a full business," she suggested one night as we reviewed my latest project. "I could help with the business plan. It's literally what I studied." That conversation sparked what would become Narrative Edge, our digital marketing agency specializing in authentic storytelling for brands. We started small, working from our apartment kitchen table, but within 2 years of graduation, we had an actual office with 3 employees. The irony wasn't lost on me that my ability to craft compelling narratives had been honed through years of fighting to maintain my own truth against Amber's manipulated version of reality. In therapy, Dr. Martinez helped me recognize that my hyper-awareness of how stories could be twisted had become a professional strength. "You can spot inauthenticity a mile away," she noted. "That's valuable in your field." By the time I turned 30, Narrative Edge had grown to a team of 12 with clients nationwide. Jasmine handled the business operations while I led the creative team. We had moved into our 3rd office space, a converted loft in downtown Chicago with exposed brick walls covered in our best campaign work. My personal life had healed alongside my professional growth. Through therapy, I'd learned to trust again, building a chosen family of friends who knew my whole story and loved me without the conditions my biological family had imposed. I'd had several relationships, some more serious than others, but was currently single by choice, focusing on the agency's expansion. Contact with my family had dwindled to occasional text exchanges on major holidays. I'd send a brief, "Merry Christmas" or "Happy Birthday," receiving equally perfunctory responses. It was a relationship maintained by the thinnest of threads, but I'd made peace with that reality. Or so I thought, until my phone lit up with my mother's name one Tuesday afternoon as I was reviewing storyboards for a new client pitch. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, as I usually did. Something made me answer. "Megan." My mother's voice sounded older, strained in a way I hadn't heard before. "We need to talk." "Mom." I stepped away from my desk, signaling to Jasmine that I needed a moment. "Is everything okay?" "No, it's not." Her voice cracked slightly. "We're in trouble, Megan. Serious trouble." I moved into the small conference room, closing the door behind me. "What kind of trouble?" "Financial trouble. We need $75,000 by Friday, or we're going to lose the house." The bluntness of the request after years of minimal contact was stunning. "No, how are you?" "No, I've missed you."
Just a demand for money.
"What happened?" asked, keeping my voice neutral. She sighed heavily. "It's complicated. There were some investments that didn't pan out. Amber was helping manage our finances, and there were some miscalculations." "Miscalculations?" I repeated. "You mean Amber lost your money?" "Don't start with that tone, Megan. She was trying to help us secure our retirement." The market turned unexpectedly. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 as Dr. Martinez had taught me. "So you're calling me after all this time because you need money. You're a daughter too. Family helps family in times of need." The irony was so thick I could hardly breathe through it. Where was that family loyalty when I needed support? When Amber was systematically destroying my sense of self? When you were consulting psychiatrists about my condition without ever considering she might be lying? That was years ago, Megan.
People change.
Amber's grown up a lot. And yet here you are, calling me to clean up her mess. It's not just her mess. It's our family home at stake. The home you grew up in. That struck a nerve, though not in the way she intended. That house held few positive memories for me. "I need to think about this," I said finally. "I'll call you back." I returned to my desk in a daze. Jasmine took one look at my face and pulled me into the break room. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "My family called. They need $75,000 by Friday to save their house. Apparently Amber made some miscalculations with their finances." Jasmine's eyebrows shot up. "After 14 years of radio silence, they call for money? That's some audacity." The thing is, I said slowly, part of me wants to help. Not for Amber, but it is my childhood home. The childhood home where you were systematically abused, Jasmine reminded me gently. What does Dr. Martinez say about maintaining boundaries? She was right, of course. I'd spent years in therapy establishing healthy boundaries with my family. Sending money without addressing the underlying dynamics would only reinforce the pattern. That evening, I called Dr. Martinez for an emergency session. I think I need to go back, I told her after explaining the situation. Not just send money. Actually go back and face them. What would that accomplish for you? She asked carefully. Closure, maybe? I left in the middle of the night like a thief. I never really stood up for myself, just escaped. Maybe I need to go back as the person I've become and finally say what needs to be said. Dr. Martinez nodded. Just be clear about your expectations. They may not provide the validation or apology you deserve. I know, but I need to do this for me, not them. I called my mother the next morning. I'll help, I said, but I want to discuss it in person. I'll fly in tomorrow. Her relief was palpable. Thank you, Megan. We'll make this up to you somehow. The flight to Pennsylvania the next day gave me time to prepare mentally. Jasmine had offered to come with me for moral support, but this was something I needed to do alone. I rented a car at the airport, the familiar landscape of my hometown sliding past the windows as I drove. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the green shutters now faded, the white paint peeling in places. Signs of neglect that mirrored the neglect I'd experienced within its walls. My mother answered the door, her hair grayer, her face more lined than in my memories. Megan, she breathed, moving to hug me. I stepped back slightly, not ready for that level of intimacy. Mom. She led me into the living room where my father waited, looking older and somehow diminished in the recliner that had always been his throne. Amber sat perched on the sofa, her expression a carefully composed mask of contrition that didn't reach her eyes. You look well, Dad said awkwardly. I am well, I replied, remaining standing. I've built a good life in Chicago. We've seen your company website, Mom said. Narrative edge. Very impressive. Of course they'd research me before asking for money. Thank you. Now let's talk about why I'm here. What exactly happened with your finances? The story emerged in fragments, each family member contributing pieces while avoiding direct responsibility. Amber had convinced my parents to liquidate their retirement accounts and invest in a guaranteed high-yield opportunity that turned out to be little more than a Ponzi scheme. When that collapsed, she'd taken out a second mortgage on their house to try to recoup the losses through increasingly desperate investments. The bank is foreclosing unless we can make a substantial payment by Friday, Dad explained. We've exhausted all other options. All other options except the daughter you essentially disowned, I noted. Amber finally spoke directly to me. I know you hate me, Megan, but this isn't about me. It's about Mom and Dad not losing their home. This is absolutely about you, Amber. It's about the pattern that's defined this family from the beginning. You create chaos, and everyone else adapts to accommodate you. That's not fair, Mom interjected. Amber was trying to help secure their retirement by gambling with their life savings without any financial expertise. That's not help, that's recklessness. But then, consequences have never applied to Amber, have they? Dad shifted uncomfortably. We didn't call you here to rehash old grievances, Megan. No, you called me for $75,000. But I need you all to understand something first. I took a deep breath. What happened in this house was abuse. Amber psychologically tortured me for years, and you two enabled and justified it. You made me believe I was crazy, unstable, and unworthy of the same love you lavished on her. That's ridiculous, Amber scoffed, but her eyes darted away from mine. Is it? Let's talk about my Northwestern acceptance letter that you stole. Or my camera that mysteriously ended up damaged in my car trunk when I never put it there. Or the countless times you turned my friends against me with lies. You always were dramatic, Dad muttered. No, I was gaslit. There's a difference. I turned to face him fully. You consulted a psychiatrist about me without ever meeting with me. Do you have any idea how unethical that is? How deeply that betrayed any trust one might have had in you as parents? Mom's eyes filled with tears. We were worried about you. You were worried about the disruption to the family narrative. Amber was the golden child, so I had to be the problem. I turned back to Amber. Tell them the truth. Just once in your life, tell them what you really did. A tense silence filled the room. Amber stared at me, calculation visible behind her eyes. Finally, something shifted in her expression.
Fine.
You want the truth? Yes, I made your life hell. I was jealous of how easily everything came to you. School, art, making friends. You didn't even have to try, while I worked my ass off for every achievement. I stared at her, genuinely shocked by this admission. That's your justification? I had it easy. I was socially isolated, psychologically tortured, and convinced I was mentally unstable because you were jealous. You were always Dad's favorite, she spat. From the day you were born. Look at Megan's drawing. Isn't she talented? Megan's so smart. She's reading already. I just made sure they saw you weren't so perfect. Mom's face had gone pale. Amber, what are you saying? I'm saying Megan wasn't crazy. I did take her things. I did sabotage her friendships. I did plan her camera in her car and damage it first. She turned to me with defiance rather than remorse. And I'd do it again. You got away. You built this perfect life while I'm stuck here managing their messes. The validation I'd sought for decades landed with a hollow thud. There was no satisfaction in finally being believed, only a profound sadness for all the years lost to this dysfunction. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. I'll provide $25,000, not $75,000. It will be structured as a loan with formal paperwork drawn up by my lawyer. The condition is that all three of you attend family therapy to address the patterns that brought you to this point. $25,000 won't be enough, Dad protested. Then sell some assets. Downsize. Do what normal people do when they face financial hardship instead of calling the daughter you haven't properly spoken to in 14 years. Amber laughed bitterly. And if we refuse your conditions? Then you get nothing from me. My obligation to this family ended the night I left with a duffel bag and backpack, carrying everything I owned because I couldn't stand another day under this roof. I stood, gathering my purse. I'll be at the Marriott downtown until tomorrow. Let me know your decision by morning. If you agree to my terms, my lawyer will contact you with the paperwork. As I walked to the door, Mom called after me. Megan, wait. Can we at least have dinner together tonight?
Try to reconnect.
I paused, hand on the doorknob. I don't think I'm ready for that. Maybe after some therapy, if you follow through. Walking back to my rental car, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I had faced my past without being diminished by it. I had named the truth and stood firm in it. Whether they accepted my terms or not, I had finally closed a chapter that had been left painfully open for too long. The next morning, my phone rang at 7:30 a.m. Dad's name appeared on the screen. We've discussed your offer, he said without preamble. We'll accept the loan and the therapy condition. All three of you? I clarified. A pause. Amber is resistant, but she'll participate. It won't work if she's just going through the motions, Dad. She'll come around. The alternative isn't acceptable. I provided my lawyer's contact information, and by the end of the day, the preliminary paperwork was drafted. The $25,000 would be transferred upon signing, with repayment terms extending over 5 years. The therapy requirement was explicitly included, with regular attendance as a condition of maintaining the loan's favorable interest rate. Back in Chicago, I processed the confrontation with Dr. Martinez. How do you feel about how it went? She asked. Complicated. I admitted. Part of me is still angry that it took a financial crisis for them to acknowledge what happened. Another part feels vindicated that Amber finally admitted the truth. But mostly, I feel free. Free in what way? Free from needing their validation. I went back as an adult who has built a successful life despite them, not as the wounded child seeking approval. I set boundaries and maintained them. Whether they ever truly understand what they did to me doesn't define my worth anymore. Over the following months, my parents began therapy with a family counselor I helped them find. Amber attended sporadically at first, then more consistently as the therapist began addressing the family dynamics that had shaped all of us. My mother called every few weeks with awkward updates. The therapist says we enabled an unhealthy competition between you girls, she ventured during one call. I never saw it that way before. That's a start, I acknowledged. There's a lot more to unpack. I know. We're trying, Megan. I'm sorry it took so long. It wasn't the comprehensive apology I might have once craved, but I recognized it as progress. My father was slower to acknowledge his role, but by the 6-month mark, he had begun to express regret for how he dismissed my experiences. Amber remained the most resistant to change. During my brief visit home for Christmas, the first holiday I'd spent with them in 15 years, she vacillated between sullen silence and performative contrition. She's struggling with rewriting her narrative of herself, Dr. Martinez explained when I discussed it with her. For her entire life, she's been the golden child. Acknowledging her abusive behavior threatens that identity. Meanwhile, narrative edge continued to flourish. Jasmine and I expanded into a new office space and hired 5 more employees. We launched a foundation called Truth Tellers, providing marketing services to nonprofit organizations supporting young adults from dysfunctional homes. At one of our foundation's first events, I found myself sharing parts of my story publicly for the first time. Gaslighting doesn't just happen in romantic relationships, I told the audience. It can occur within families, convincing children that their reality isn't valid. Breaking free from that requires tremendous courage and support. After the event, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Your story is my story," she said simply. I didn't have words for what was happening to me until tonight. That conversation sparked a new dimension to our foundation's work. We developed a mentorship program pairing successful professionals who had overcome family trauma with young adults just beginning their independence journey. As for my family, the relationship remained complicated but evolving. My parents repaid the loan ahead of schedule, which I took as a positive sign of respect for boundaries. They continued therapy even after fulfilling the minimum requirement, another encouraging development. Amber and I established a cautious, limited relationship. During one rare honest conversation, she admitted, "I don't know if I can ever be the sister you deserved. There's too much water under the bridge." "I'm not looking for a sister anymore," I told her truthfully. "I built my chosen family when my biological one failed me. What I want from you is accountability and changed behavior." By my 32nd birthday, for years after that fateful phone call asking for money, I had achieved a level of peace I once thought impossible. The past couldn't be undone, but it no longer controlled my present or future. The wounded child who fled in the night had become a woman who stood in her truth and used it to help others find theirs. During my birthday celebration, surrounded by friends who were family in all the ways that mattered, Jasmine raised her glass. To Megan, who taught me that resilience isn't just surviving tough times, but thriving despite them. Later that evening, as the party wound down, I stepped onto the balcony of our office loft where we'd hosted the gathering. Chicago's skyline glittered before me, a far cry from the suburban Pennsylvania neighborhood where my story began. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Happy birthday, Megan. I'm proud of the woman you've become, even though I can't take credit for it. Love, Mom." It wasn't a perfect resolution. Real life rarely offers those. But it was enough to close the chapter with peace rather than anger. The journey from victim to survivor to thriver had been long and often painful, but standing under the vast night sky, I felt gratitude for where it had led me. So, what about you? Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't see your worth? Or maybe you've been the one who needed to make amends. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more content about healing and growth, and share with someone who might need to hear that their story matters too. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Remember, Your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it, but by the truth you know in your heart.